Hey guys, we're back here now. We had some technical difficulties earlier in the show. We tried to record, but my internet went out and I had to download Skype on my phone. It was a whole ordeal, but luckily we were only going for 6 minutes. I was talking to myself about Kevin Durant for like 4 minutes, not knowing what the hell was going on. Uh, but
Technology.
hopefully we don't get demonetized for that what I just said there. But
I don't even think we are monetized.
Yeah, no, I know, but maybe you gotta flag it as excessive. I don't, or not explicit, but it's late, guys. We're gonna record this now. But so today on the show, we're gonna be talking about the Warriors in Game 5. I'm gonna break down their performance. We're gonna look to Game 6. We're gonna show you guys some current events in other sports, big things that are happening. Eric's going to talk about some NASCAR, and Eric's also got a rant for you at the end, so make sure you stay tuned for that. In the future, we're going to be posting some polls up on Facebook and Twitter about some possible rant topics that Eric's going to rant about, so you guys can get your guesses going on what Eric will be ranting about. We know what he's going to be ranting about, but you guys don't. So to me, this was an interesting Game 5. The score was 106 to 105. So this was by far the closest game in the series, with the Warriors only winning by 1 point. The Warriors outscored Toronto by 6 in the first quarter. Second and third quarters were dead even between both of them. And then Toronto outscored Golden State by 5 in the fourth. And to me, when I was watching this game, I could break this game down into 3 different parts of the game. The first part was up until Kevin Durant got injured. The second part was going to be from Kevin Durant's injury till about, I'll even put it to the 2-minute mark of the fourth quarter. And then that last 2 minutes was a bonanza of bad play, in my opinion, overall by both teams, but more so by Toronto. I think Golden State just made less. Golden State really got away with a lot of bad turnovers at the end there, and they somehow still managed to win this game. I'm guessing just by pure experience, in these closeout games and being in 4 straight finals against the Cavs. But the first part of the game, when Kevin Durant played, it looked like it was going to be a blowout by the Warriors. I mean, Durant made his first 3 3-pointers. Durant looked great playing. It looked like he could have came back earlier. He wasn't slow. He wasn't. Usually when someone gets injured, they come back and it takes some time to get going. But with Durant, he just started lighting up the threes, and the Warriors got off to a rolling start. And then when Durant got injured, obviously that changed the whole dynamics of the game, and really the whole dynamics for the rest of the series, because now we know he's not going to play. He's obviously got an Achilles rupture, so
no more speculation, guys.
Yep, no more guessing, and that's honestly a good thing for betting purposes and DraftKings like we do. We don't have the question of, is he going to play, is he not? I don't think too many people started him in our DraftKings that we did for the last game, but I don't think we all thought that Golden State was going to play without him. But then earlier in the day before the game, they declared that he was going to play. And I wasn't expecting much, but I definitely wasn't expecting him to come out with that fast start with 12 points, but he did. And then when he got his injury, I had a couple thoughts on it, mainly because I was thinking how terrible this is for him to get injured, and you want everybody to be healthy, at full health for such an important time of the year. And obviously this injury is pretty severe. So it's going to affect him not just for this season, but for next season as well. So it's unfortunate that it happened, but to me also, I I think that Golden State rushed his injury. I think that they were feeling some heat down 3-1, and I feel like they needed him to play. They thought they need him to win the game and to have a chance to win the series. So I feel like they rushed him back in when he was still at a high risk for injury. And it only took a quarter and about a half for him to get that injury. So I think the Warriors were irresponsible with bringing Kevin Durant back, knowing that he had a high chance of re-injury. He had, in the Rocket series, they declared it a calf strain, and then this ended up being a ruptured Achilles. But the Achilles and calf strain injuries are two different and completely isolated events. So if it truly was a calf strain, then the injury that he suffered was totally random from that and totally freakish and I have a hard time believing that because all the evidence when the injury initially happened was that it was an Achilles tear, not a rupture, but a tear to cause him to miss the amount of time he did. And he really should have, under normal circumstances, missed more time than he did. And he was really rushed back into things. And I think that was a major reason for the re-injury in this case. And it's going to have significant consequences. This is not just a Warriors situation because Kevin Durant's an impending free agent. This affects a lot of different teams. If the Knicks were hoping to add him and Kyrie next year, they're like big three with whatever draft pick they get and those guys, then those plans are now changed because there's a very good chance Kevin Durant might not play at all next year. Kawhi Leonard missed all of last year with a bruised thigh, so that's definitely possible. But aside from the Kevin Durant injury, I thought Kawhi Leonard really didn't show up that much in the first half. He was too focused, in my opinion, on trying to improve his game defensively because Durant was owning him when Golden State was on offense, and he was never really, because of that, allowed to get into a rhythm offensively. So that's why I think his box score, he ended up with 26 points, but a lot of the points he had were late in the game, which you want to have late points, obviously, be clutch in the fourth quarter, but obviously at the very end of the fourth quarter, he kind of disappeared a little bit, but Kawhi, he really should have had a better game, especially in a closeout game, Game 5 on your home court. A lot of people think that the Raptors are going to win this. They've got all the momentum. They've thoroughly outplayed Golden State in all their games, really. So he really should have done a better job of leading them to this win. But I give Golden State credit for persevering through the Kevin Durant injury. It could have been very easy for them to panic once they see him go down and not believe in themselves that they have a chance to win. But credit Steph, credit Clay. Steph was a lot more hot or cold this game. He started out hot, he ended hot, but there were some stretches in the middle where he wasn't really seen, whereas Clay was kind of steady throughout the game. I think for his individual stats, he had a much more balanced game. I think he finished with a few less points than Steph, but he was more balanced, whereas Steph was more on or off. And then, so in that second part of the game, from when Durant was injured till the last 3 minutes, Golden State was winning for most all that time, and you could tell though that Toronto was gonna make their push. They were gonna make a run to tie it, and Golden State just kept weathering the storm. Every time Toronto looked like they were gonna take the lead, that Golden State would jump out all of a sudden, have a 10-point lead, it'd get cut back down, then Golden State would bring it back up again. until eventually Toronto did take over. And then I'll talk briefly about how the last few minutes of the game went. And Kawhi Leonard goes on this magnificent run in about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, where he scores something like 10 points. And he's absolutely unstoppable. He's making 3-pointers. He's doing everything. And then I feel like once Toronto got up by 6, that they, with only a few minutes left, they were ready to celebrate. I mean, I think that they were too confident that they had already won the game and won the series, and they were starting to celebrate too early. And then for some reason, Nick Nurse, the head coach of the Raptors, decides to call a timeout when there's no real reason to call timeout. His team's on a roll. Steph and Clay are gassed. The Warriors aren't doing anything. You're up by 6. Let's just get the game over with and celebrate. But instead, he calls a timeout. And even Kawhi was like, huh? Like, you could tell on his facial expression, he was confused by it. And then I think at that point, their coach Nurse regretted calling it because you don't want to disrupt Kawhi. And then they come back out. Golden State regroups, and then I believe Steph made a 3 or 2 threes. I think Draymond made a 3 or something.
I think in that moment, Steph made 1, Clay made 1, and Draymond made 1. I think all 3 of them made 1, if I remember it correctly.
Yeah. But I do know Clay made the game winning 1, so he put him up.
Or maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, so I know definitely Clay made the game winning 1. Steph made a contested 1. Draymond shot an open 1, but it was like boom, 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 and then all of a sudden you see the Warriors are up in the game, and then so the Warriors are up by 3, and then they play the most careless game. I mean, you hardly ever see backcourt violations in games, but Golden State had 2 in the last, and one of them was just completely stupid. It wasn't even, Toronto wasn't really even doing anything on one of them. One of them, Toronto, I'll give them credit for forcing it, but the other one was just careless, and it was like, really, you're causing all these silly turnovers. Not Draymond, Boogie Cousins gets called for a illegal screen and an offensive foul. Like, all these things were going on for the Warriors that surely you would think the Raptors would be able to score, but they only managed to get 2 points off of a goaltending call. And then down to the last possession, Kawhi has the ball up at the top, like near the midcourt line. And for some reason, this is another coaching error in my opinion. They should have called a timeout then with 15 or it might have been 8 or 15 seconds left. But you got to call it. It was 15. Yeah. But you got to call a timeout there because you don't want to be that far from the hoop with that little time left. You want to, because if you call timeout and you inbound it, you can inbound it much closer than where you're at and try and, run a play or something. Usually teams do well after they call timeouts. Usually you can design something to stop or to score. And they chose not to do that. They called a timeout when they shouldn't have called a timeout. And then they didn't call one when they needed to. And that was puzzling to me. And so Kawhi ends up getting double teamed by Iguodala and Clay, I believe. And then he passes it to Van Vliet, who passes it to Lowry. And I think Van Vliet should have held on to it and tried to do something, because passing it to Lowry, I haven't talked about Lowry yet, but I will now.
We might get back to that a little bit.
So yeah, I may have a rant at the end, but I think Zach has one here also.
Yeah, I'm not going to have a designed rant for every episode or anything, but definitely the ongoing meme so far in this podcasting series has been my disgust with Kyle Lowry, to put it bluntly.
Wow.
Well, you're the highest paid player on their team. You should be doing, you should be contributing a lot more than he is. And he's the veteran leader. He's been on Toronto for a long time, as far as I can remember. And I expect more of a former All-Star who has a history of shrinking in the playoffs. And it's true, man. Like, there's some times where the choking mentality, or I mean, this guy has totally got that stereotype, and it's valid. I can't argue against it, because it when when he shot that shot, I didn't even I didn't wasn't even paying attention to the defense. It could have been a wide open shot and he would have missed it. Like, that's how unclutch Kyle Lowry is, in my opinion. And he finished with 18 points, and I don't know if you guys heard this or not in the time that I was cutting out or not, but he had the quietest 18 points that I've ever seen, because he shot terribly from the 3-point line. He only made 1 or 2 free throws, and he got a lot of not dunks, but he got a lot of layups and a lot of easy shots to give him his 18 points. But he missed a lot. Anything that was contested, he missed it. It had to be wide open for him to make it. And then Draymond, the defense on him there, I'll give him credit for that, but he could have been wide open. He'd have missed that shot 10 out of 10 times. That might
Savage.
I'm going harsh, but I think he deserves it. But so then I ended up making that meme. Yeah, the meme. I actually made that, though, during the game when he was playing poorly. But then towards the game, or as the game progressed, he wasn't playing poorly. He wasn't playing good, but he wasn't playing poorly enough for that meme to really make sense. But after that last shot where he had, I was like, this is the perfect time to play this out. So I shared it on Facebook and got a couple laughs from these guys. But so I think it's pretty funny. But I really don't trust Kyle Lowry at all. And if you've noticed, I've never taken him in a DraftKings, and I never will. I think he's way overpriced in that. I'm a Van Vliet guy over Lowry, but that's just my. So I think Van Vliet should have. I think he should have tried to do something. First of all, I think Kawhi should have done a better job. Well, I mean, if we're going back even farther, they should have called a timeout. But after the timeout wasn't called, this was such care. Like, and the Warriors had so many mistakes too that the Raptors should have won this game. They lost by 1 point, but they were outshot, or Golden State outshot them on 3-pointers 20-8. And the Raptors had a terrible free throw percentage shooting night. Like, they were doing great. Their free throw percentage was super high in the first 4 games. In this game, it was much, much lower. And of course, that's the one where they lose by 1 point. So if you make two of the free throws that the team missed, they would have won the game. But I'll give Golden State credit, though. They definitely, I think, I give them credit for not folding after Durant got injured. Like I said, it could have been easy to panic, but this is going to be interesting going into the next game, seeing how that goes. But, no KD. Looney's questionable. Is he going to suck it up? Is Golden State going to go out there only with Boogie and Draymond and Jonas Jerebko? Who knows? But I'll let these guys talk now. I'm done ranting. I love it.
Well, honestly, I think Zach has summed this up pretty perfectly. I mean, there's not really much else that can be said. Watching this game, I did not see most of this game because I was at work, but I saw the fourth quarter. And from what I saw in that fourth quarter, I agree with everything Zach said pretty much. I thought the same thing when the Raptors called the timeout when they went on that big run, that I just thought that was dumb. Mm-hmm. And Susan was sitting next to me on the couch watching, and she doesn't even really watch basketball that much. Like, she's very casual when it comes to basketball. But she, even sitting next to me, said, why would they stop the game when they were doing so good? And I said, I don't know. I said,
Good
I'm baffled by this decision
question.
myself. I don't understand it. It made no sense to me. And then, as Zach mentioned, the Warriors come out of that timeout and make 2 or 3 threes in a row and then take the lead and get back in the game. But then DeMarcus Cousins had all those mistakes. I will say the offensive goaltending or offensive interference or whatever they call it that he had, that to me did not look like offensive interference. That on the
I was
did you guys
surprised by
did you
that
guys see
too.
what I was talking about? Yeah.
The
I
basket
know what you're
interference.
talking about. Yeah,
Yeah, basket interference.
they
Yeah,
called it basket interference, and then they said it's the call stood essentially. But to me, I thought that it should have counted. But
the
is that
only
what you're
reason why I think they didn't overturn it was because in some of the camera angles it looked like the ball was over the rim, but then in some of the other camera angles you could clearly tell it wasn't. So I was surprised that they didn't go off of the ones that clearly showed it and
Yeah.
overturned it. Because even though I'm rooting for the Raptors to win, I thought that was a bad call. Obviously, deep down I wasn't complaining about it, but I said I didn't understand that call. But anyway, but then he had the defensive goaltending and he had the illegal screen and Draymond had the backcourt violation and it honestly felt like I wasn't watching the two best teams in basketball. It was kind of disappointing. I'm thinking these are the two teams going for the championship and both of them are having terrible performances here. And with it being a, potential championship win for Toronto and potential elimination game for the Warriors, you would think there would have been better basketball being played there. I was very, very surprised by that. But the only thing I would even say, though, that I slightly agree with on Zach was with at the end of the game on that last possession with Kawhi Leonard being better. I don't really think there was much else he could do in that situation because they had him double teamed pretty good, and I don't really think there was any way around it. Passing the ball to Van Vliet, who was open at that moment, was the best move in my opinion. However, maybe what they should have done was after Van Vliet got the ball, that's when they should have called the timeout, was when Kawhi got double teamed. They should have called the timeout right there. I want to say there were maybe 8 or 9 seconds left at that point. I felt like they should time out, regroup, try to draw up a play, and go from there. But since they didn't call the timeout, I thought Kawhi making that pass was the best move. But maybe afterward they should have tried to find a way to set some screens to get the ball to Kawhi again, because the ball ultimately ending up in Kyle Lowry's hands, as Zach has ranted about, was a mistake. And I want to say Draymond tipped the ball a little bit, which messed up the shot. But I agree with Zach, though. I don't think he would have made it regardless. Overall, though, from what I saw, kind of a disappointing game. And I'm just hoping that the next one will be better.
I'll say this: it definitely, the quality at the end was disappointing, but I mean, this was by far the closest of all the games.
Oh yeah, it definitely.
So this had the most drama. I mean, the KD injury was unfortunate, but that's drama. Like it was the most entertaining of all the games, I think, for that aspect. But the pure basketball being played, I think, was pretty poor at the end. Like, you didn't see at the beginning, man. Golden State was playing like 73-9. Golden State, like they were unstoppable at the beginning.
Yeah, well, and then too the part that I saw where Kawhi made those 4 shots in a row, that was pretty insane. That was cool to watch. I definitely enjoyed watching the Raptors make the comeback. I was thinking, man, this is it. They're coming back. They're going to get their first championship. And then the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game were just so weird. I'm thinking, how do we have this epic buildup where Golden State has this lead, and then Durant gets hurt, and then slowly but surely the Raptors get back in it, and then the Raptors go on a big run and take the lead, and then both teams just start crapping the bed all of a sudden. It was weird. It was weird, but
Really weird.
I do agree with Zach too that this was the most dramatic game easily, other than Game 2, which unfortunately the two most dramatic games were the two that the Warriors have won. So I'll make my prediction a little bit when we get to the prediction, but I'll let Connor add any thoughts that he might have.
Yeah, so I actually did not get a chance to watch any of the game, unfortunately. But yeah, these guys pretty much hit the nail on the head. The Warriors in the game, that comeback from the Raptors was fun to watch. Unfortunately, they couldn't, but they tried their best. And yeah, Kyle Lowry, I have no clue why Van Vliet made that extra pass. And like what these guys were saying, the most baffling thing to me at the end was that they were only down by one. They didn't need a three-pointer to tie or even to take the lead. All they needed was a layup or something, a mid-range jumper or something. They didn't need a three-pointer, basically. So I don't know why, you didn't, first of all, take the timeout so you can inbounds the ball at half court instead of from the other end of the court. And then, if you tried to drive in that situation, why not try and drive and get a foul? And if you don't get a foul, then try and kick it back out to someone who's open so you can get like a free throw. And even that would have tied the games. Yeah, I just thought that was kind of baffling, the last play. And like you guys said, the horrible play there for the last 2 minutes of both teams. The Warriors just committing stupid turnovers. And so, but yeah, and I'll let Zach take us on to the next part of our podcast here.
Sure, for sure. So now that we've got our thoughts about this game behind us, Game 6 is going to be on Thursday, so tomorrow, in Oracle. And it's going to be an interesting game because, like, this will be the first one where we know that Durant's not going to be playing. It's also going to be, we know for 100% that this is the last game in Oracle. So we haven't really talked that much about, or Eric ranted about the the Warriors fans at the in the Game 4 that they had, which was disappointing because for them, they really should have won Game 4. I think I didn't watch the game, but I remember them winning for that early part of it. So, and I saw an article that was talking about the kind of the evolution of the Warriors home court, and the Oakland Raiders play in the same city, and their home field is known in football as being the most one of the toughest places to play in because the fans are so wild, and so it's such a hostile environment for opposing teams to come into. And apparently that's how it used to be. Especially, it used to be very similar for the Warriors back when they were kind of an average team. Yeah, are you saying something?
I was just saying, unfortunately for the Raiders, their field sucks. Like there was a game that they played last year. I think they were playing the Broncos, and man, their uniforms were turning black by the end of that game because the field was just in such poor condition.
Yeah, but the as far as the fans in the stadium, it's a hostile and there's a lot of fights that happen inside. Like it's one of the intimidating places to play as a player for sure. But that's apparently how the Warriors home court was very similar to the Raiders home court back when the Warriors were average and below average as a team, and then in the home court would be the ones that would fire up the team. Whereas now with Steph and Clay and everybody else, the Warriors fire up the crowd. And I feel like that's a interesting shift of dynamic in the crowd. This isn't about basketball, but the crowd plays a big part of it. That the Warriors fans don't really get into it until the team gets into it, which is detrimental to the team because you want the crowd to get you into it. Anything that the crowd can do to give you an advantage is good for you. And that's not the reason why I'm picking the Raptors, but I think that's a reason. Well, the Raptors have won all 3 of their games this season in Oakland. So they obviously are capable of doing it. I think the odds of them winning 4, if you would ask me like at the beginning of the season, what do you think that the Raptors win 4 games in Oracle? I would have said no way in hell that they're going to do that. But yeah.
So you're on drugs.
yeah.
That would be the thought process if anyone was going to say that. You know what I mean?
And I know KD was injured for a couple of them. I think he missed one of their regular season games. I can't remember if it was in Toronto or if it was in the Bay, but still with Steph and Clay, you got to think that they'd win one of these games at home. But they were unable to win 2 games in this playoffs against the Raptors. They lost 2 games to the Clippers even way early on in the first round of the playoffs. And one of them, the Clippers came back from like 30-something points to win it. It was crazy.
That was with Kevin Durant.
That was with KD, and that was just a total collapse. I don't know what they were doing in that, but they obviously didn't take the Clippers very seriously because that series should not have gone 6 games, but it ended up doing so. But so they've been shaky on their home court, and I think the crowd will be better and louder since it's for sure their last game there. But I don't think it's going to bother the Raptors at all, really. And the only thing it might do is it might make the Warriors play better, but I don't think it's going to make the Raptors play any worse because the Raptors have played some pretty good games on the road. And also, like Eric said, that Kawhi usually plays good against the Warriors on the road, and Kyle Lowry's even has his better games in Oakland. I'm not taking Kyle Lowry in DraftKings, but I'm saying he'll probably have a better game than he did before. But still, like I'm picking the Raptors because I feel like now they really should have won the last game if it wasn't for the coaching mishaps. And I feel like with all the injuries on Golden State that they're just not going to be able to do it. They're so hobbled as a team. Iguodala has still got the injury he's playing with. Looney may or may not play, and that's actually really big for him because they don't have any bigs. Boogie's kind of hurt too. They don't have any bigs to match up with Siakam and Gasol and Ibaka. And out of the 3 of those, surprisingly, Ibaka has been the one that has been the best lately out of all 3 of those guys. You would have thought it'd be Siakam or Gasol, but it's actually Ibaka. And Draymond, the last couple games, hasn't been playing very well. He's actually 1 technical away from a game suspension. So it's very possible that they call a foul on Draymond where Draymond, because I have noticed the ones where he has technicals on are fouls that they call on him that don't really look like fouls, but instead of just being a normal player, he just goes running down the court screaming and gets a tech. It's completely silly to me why anybody.
Yeah, I mentioned it in one of the other podcasts. I'm shocked he doesn't get even more technical fouls on him than he does get, because I'll watch him yell like 8 times in a row and not get a tech, and I'm like, bro, you're pushing it, man. It's like you're trying to get a technical.
If you weren't Draymond Green, you'd be getting technicals right now.
He'll slam the ball down or something, and I can sympathize with him on some of the plays he gets called a foul on. I think he got the one in the last game where he got a tech on. I looked at the replay and it didn't look like at all like a foul to me. This is a Lowry beneficiary play too. Lowry benefited from this No surprise, but Lowry benefited from a bad call on Draymond. And then instead of just taking the bad call, which it's only 2 free throws, like it's not like in football where it's like a personal foul, 15-yard penalty on like a third down. That'd be crazy, but or that you could get more upset about that, but to run down the court screaming for just a common foul is not smart to do, and it's not smart when you're several fouls away from. You only get a few more times you can do that before you get kicked out of a game. Last time he got suspended in the finals, they lost that series, so that's something to keep an eye on. But I've got the Raptors winning this game. I think Golden State will come out early and play well, but then I think the Raptors are going to take over in the second half and comfortably win the game. I'll say by 6 or 7.
All right. Yeah, I've got the Raptors winning also. As Zach mentioned, I picked the Raptors every game. I'm sticking to it. They're going to win this.
You picked the Warriors, I think, in 6 originally, but you picked the Raptors every game.
Yeah, well, after that first game, they changed my mind, and I had changed it to Raptors in 6, of course, which would still mean I would have to pick Golden State a couple times, but I've had some changes of heart. But I'm still sticking with the Raptors. A great point that Zach had mentioned when he was talking about the recap of Game 5 was that he felt like when the Raptors went on that run and got the lead and the crowd was all fired up and everything, that they felt like they had won the championship.
Mm-hmm.
And then that seemed to cause them, they just weren't playing right. And I hadn't really thought about that, but when Zach said that, I thought that makes a lot of sense, and I feel like that could be the case. And so because of that, I'm now picking the Raptors to win this game because I feel like that loss in Game 5 gave them a wake-up call. They had to realize, okay, we don't have it yet. And if we lose again, then it's going to Game 7, which obviously they don't want that. I think they're going to be more focused this time. And once they get a lead, or assuming they are able to get a lead, then I think they're going to be able to keep it this time, keep their foot on the gas long enough, and win the game and win the championship. So that's my prediction. And as Zach mentioned, Golden State has so many injuries. From what I'm seeing, Looney is going to try to play, but I don't see how he's going to be able to be effective with that injury. DeMarcus Cousins is still nagging. Iguodala is still nagging. Durant is obviously out. This just adds up to me as being a win for the Raptors.
I think almost every player on their team has been injured or sick or something at one point in the series. Except for Draymond.
Because Steph Curry got sick in that one game. Of course, I think that was Game 2 when they won. He did so bad in that first half of that game. And then Thompson had the hamstring injury. Livingston, I know, was hurt before the finals. He was healthy when the finals started, but he had an injury like right before the finals that he was dealing with, and some kind of nagging injury that he was recovering from. So the Warriors just have a lot going on, and I think the Raptors are going to be smarter this game. And plus, too, the Raptors were so bad at three-point shooting in the last game. I mean, looking at the stat line, only 8 out of 32. That's terrible. They're not going to be that bad from three-point range again. I mean, yeah, Connor just pulled up the stats on the screen. The Warriors were almost 23% better from three-point range. And while the Warriors are generally a superior three-point shooting team, the difference between three-point percentages is not going to be that high in the next game. I think the Raptors are going to take it. I'm hoping it'll be comfortable. It's hard to say exactly by how many, but I'm going to agree with Zach, though, and say that the Raptors win between 6 and 8 points. I think they've got it. Connor, what do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because for all of you that have been following the podcast, I don't know who Zach picked in game 2 because y'all both picked Toronto in game 1. But
Yeah,
at least
I picked Golden State in game 2. So
right. But ever since I've been on the podcast, Zach and I have been wrong every time because we both picked the Warriors in games 3 and 4, and we picked Toronto last game. So things have not been going well pick-wise. This is a tough one because I do want to believe, I do believe that the Raptors are going to play better. I mean, 25% from three-point range. Something's got to change. Danny Green's got to start shooting better. Kawhi Leonard's not going to be 2 for 7 again from the three-point line. I think he'll do better. But obviously it is going to be, like we've mentioned, it will be for sure the last game at Oracle Arena. And those fans, I think they're going to be into the game. And I think that's going to really motivate Golden State. And especially, we talk about these injuries that Golden State has. But Kevin Durant got hurt at the start of the second quarter, and the Warriors still managed to keep up what they were doing. Like, they weren't as dominant, but they still managed to keep up the offense. They didn't all of a sudden fall apart because Kevin Durant went off the court. So I don't think their offense has as much of an issue, and especially with Klay Thompson healthy again. Game 3 without Klay Thompson, they couldn't do anything on offense. Steph Curry had to carry them, and nobody could help them. But my biggest concern with Toronto is, I think we've definitely mentioned this a couple times on the podcast, but there really does need to be that second person for Toronto that can consistently put up points, because we saw Kawhi was having a really bad game until the fourth quarter, and that's what they were suffering from. There has to be that second person that can put up points when Kawhi is having an off night, because the Warriors have that covered. If Steph's having a bad night, then Klay can pick them up and Draymond can pick them up. If Draymond's having a bad night, which he's been having, but Steph and Klay have been picking up the slack. The Raptors don't have that. Kyle Lowry has not stepped up this entire series. Outside of game 3, has not stepped up. Danny Green, really, again, since game 3, Danny Green has not shot well from the field. And Siakam hasn't had a fantastic game since game 1. So it's hard for me to think that Toronto is going to do better. I mean, again, for me, it all depends on the night Kawhi has. And I think the Warriors are finally starting to figure out what they need to do to keep him in check. And so I'm going to take the Warriors in this one. Might be a bit of a shock to some people, but I'm going to actually go with Golden State in this game. And I think Kawhi is going to do good, but I just don't see anybody picking up the Raptors enough to where they can get over how motivated Golden State's going to be, since they know they can win now, and also the fact that it's the last game ever at Oracle Arena. So I'm going to go with Golden State on this one.
Yeah, and it's interesting because when you talked about how poorly that you and I have done the past 4 games or so, or 3 games in the series in our predictions, but originally I remember, I think in episode 1 or 2, I predicted Golden State to win the series in 6. So I had them winning on their home court in this game 6, and then the series being over with Golden State winning. But now I've totally changed my attitude on that. I think and then I said if it goes to 7, I think Toronto wins. Now I think this is the game 7, because I think if Toronto loses game 6 and my prediction is wrong, I'm going to predict Golden State wins game 7. So and originally I had that flip-flop. I said if Golden State doesn't win 6, then Toronto wins 7. But now I'm saying if Toronto doesn't win 6, Golden State wins 7. So I know that might be confusing to you guys, but I'm changing my
No,
belief
I get
from
what you're trying to say.
yeah, I think I said it right, but to someone just like casually listening right now, they might be going like, "Huh?" But
What?
yeah. So that's my last thoughts on how the game will go, and I'll let Connor start off the DraftKings talk.
Okay. So moving on to our DraftKings lineup, as we mentioned in the last podcast, we moved to a 23 team format this time, where only the top 10 got in the money. And unfortunately, I don't know if we mentioned this at the top of the podcast or not, but this was the worst performance from the Clutch Crew Sports crew in
Except for
any of
me.
in any of our since the start of us doing this. So, but despite poor performances from Zach and I, Eric did manage to finish in second. He was only 1.25 points off the lead. So I will let Eric discuss his team.
Yeah, and if the Warriors had just let Jonas Jerebko get in the game and make 1 2-point shot, I would have got first.
3 straight weeks, man.
Yeah, well, see, this is the crazy thing about this is that I've had 3 lineups in a row where I had a player on my team that scored 0 points, but I still finished in the money. And not only did I even finish in the money, I still finished pretty comfortably in the money. Because in the other ones that we did, where we did teams or lineups with 10 people playing, and you had to finish in the top 5, I still finished second or third. And then in this one with 23, I finished second, which was an even better performance. So to have a person with 0 points and for me to still have that amount of success is a little shocking. I normally don't have success like this when I do these DraftKings lineup where if I have one person on my team that puts up a goose egg or only 2 or 3 points or something. So I guess just the key for me was I picked Kawhi as my captain, and thankfully he had that strong run at the end of the game. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had this good of a stat line where he scored those 10 points with 2 threes. That definitely made a difference. And see, this is the difference between DraftKings and real life. If DraftKings took into account, say, missed shots and you got negative points for that, or if the turnovers were more than a half a point, taken off of your score, then it would definitely go down much differently. But thankfully, DraftKings doesn't take into the account the fact that Kawhi Leonard missed 15 shots. So in terms of, while he may not have had the greatest overall game in the actual game, in terms of DraftKings numbers, it was still a pretty solid performance. So he had 87 points with the 1.5 bonus as my captain, which I was definitely fine with. Steph Curry did pretty well for me as well, getting 52 points. Serge Ibaka, man, I mean, what else can I say about this guy? He has just been a straight up beast these last few games, and doing it with even playing under 20 minutes. I give him a lot of credit. And as a Thunder fan, I definitely respect him and hated to see him go, but I still enjoy rooting for him. And I've enjoyed watching him have the success that he's had in these NBA finals. And I've also enjoyed that he's been winning me money. But yeah, I've been winning these $2.40 and $3 in this last one, so he's been winning me these big bucks. DeMarcus Cousins had a pretty good game for me as well with 26.5 points. Isn't necessarily the greatest number, but his salary was really low. His salary had been plummeting because the games before that he'd had some really bad games. So I decided to take a chance on him because of how low his salary was, and for the amount of money I spent on him, I got a pretty good result. And then my other player was Klay Thompson. He had a really good all-around game as well, getting me 44.5. So, like I said, man, if the Warriors could have just at some point let Jerebko get in there and maybe get an assist or make a jump shot or something, I would have come in first place.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm actually picking him again, but I'll explain why when we get to that part. So that was my lineup
You
overall.
always
And
have a reason.
yeah,
for
true. I've had a
picking him,
reason,
but he
and
never ends up playing.
I've still been getting guys with zero.
Yeah.
So my reasons aren't always the greatest, I guess. But at the same time, like I said, you can't complain with the results that I've
No.
had. So I've finished in the money 3 times in a row, and I'm cool with that. And before I move on to Zach and Connor, I want to give a shout out to my friend Robert for playing with us. Unfortunately, he did not finish in the money. He finished in 17th. But at one point, I had a break while I was at work, and in the third quarter, he was actually in second place. This was probably about halfway through the third quarter. So I was shocked at the end when I saw that he finished in 17th and out of the money, considering how good he was doing. He didn't have Kawhi, though, although he did have Steph Curry as his captain. He didn't have Kawhi, though, so I think that might have made a difference because Kawhi went on that big run at the end of the game, and I think a lot of people that had Kawhi probably moved up in front of him because of that. But at the same time, just wanted to give him a shout out for playing with us. I'm not sure if he's joining us again for the next one, but if he does, we'll give him a shout out again and let you guys know how he does. So those were my results and my friend Robert's results, and I'll let Zach and Connor explain their lineups before we explain who we picked in the next one.
Yeah, we'll explain what not to do.
Yeah, right. So we mentioned that I mentioned that this was the worst week that we've had so far. And as I scroll a little bit further down here, you can see that Zach and I were respectively 22nd and 23rd out of 23 people. So 2 straight last place finishes for me, but also not good for Zach being in 22nd. So I'll let him talk first, though, since he finished ahead of me.
Yeah, it was a pretty bad effort for my team. This is the first time I've lost at DraftKings.
Especially since last episode you cursed yourself by saying that you were the only one who hadn't.
Yeah, I know. I definitely did. But I knew I knew I wasn't gonna keep. I knew I was gonna lose one of these eventually, but I didn't think I'd lose it this poorly, finishing in second to last, especially with 23 people. That's even worse. But my team, I took a different. I kind of strayed from my strategy a little bit in this one. I didn't take Steph, and I only took Kawhi because I thought Clay was gonna. I personally thought Clay was going to do better than Steph, and I feel like as an overall game, like for as far as the game went, I feel like Clay had a better game than Steph, but Steph had a better DraftKings game, and I can't complain about what Clay did. He was fine as a captain. He was a little bit of a cheaper option too, so I was thinking, oh, I'm going to get more money to have better players, but what really hurt me was Siakam and Looney, and I feel like Siakam really hurt Robert as well because he was kind of an expensive guy. He's around the Draymond type of money, around that third to fourth to fifth sort of most expensive player, and with only 21 points, that's not living up to your hype. I did have Ibaka, so that was nice, but and then Looney getting injured hurt me as well because when he got injured and had to leave the game, Looney was, I don't remember if he was more than DeMarcus Cousins was, but he was, I had higher expectations for him. And then when he got injured, it really put a damper in it. Danny, like Connor mentioned, has been bad the last couple games, and I was priding myself on picking Danny Green in the right games, and I picked him in the wrong one this time. But so I
Well,
hope
he had been alternating like hot, cold, hot,
yeah,
cold. So when he was cold last game, he thought he'd be hot this time. So it's understandable.
But, yeah, so I don't want to talk too much about this lineup because it was bad, but I think this next one will be better. So.
Yeah, well, imagine being me having to talk for the second straight game, I should say, about a last place lineup. But yeah, Siakam you mentioned that Siakam hurt you and Robert, but he hurt me the most because I spent that $14,400 or whatever it was to put him as my captain, and he only turned out 31.5 points. So that wasn't fun. I did have Ibaka and Kawhi, both of them, so that was good. They were bright spots. And I had Clay too. So really, in my mind, I was looking, I think we were talking about this earlier. I was talking to Eric about our lineups, how my players, their points were pretty even with all of his players outside of the captain. So I feel like if I had managed to somehow figure out a way to put Kawhi as captain and swap him with Siakam, I probably could have done a lot better, but obviously that didn't happen. Livingston, he was just kind of the guy that I spent my remaining balance on. 4 points. I didn't really expect too much out of him. And then Van Vliet, my man, let me down, unfortunately. Only 16.5 points. I was hoping that putting him back in the lineup again would help me out a little bit, but turns out that he didn't do so good. I was actually surprised when I saw he only got drafted by 4% of the people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably just you. I'm pretty sure you were the only one that had him.
I mean, he was pretty expensive, though. I mean, I think he was like $6,000 to draft,
which is why
him,
I didn't pick him.
Right, especially since he had an off game in the previous game. So, yeah, that kind of sucked. So, moving right along to
that
next week, where hopefully I will climb out of the cellar. We're just to let everybody know we're going back to 10 people this time again. So we're going back to the old format with 10 lineups, and the top 5 end up getting money. So since Eric finished the highest in our group this time, I will let Eric talk about his lineup first.
Sounds good, man. And while Zach and Connor were talking, I did check on DraftKings. I saw Robert is going to play with us again. So shout out to you, Robert. We'll see if all 4 of us can finish in the money. That won't be an easy task since there's only going to be
very low odds for that.
There's only 5 possible winners, so the odds of that are not good. But we'll definitely see how this goes.
At
so
least
my lineup,
one of us will win.
oh yeah, there are good odds that at least one of us will win. Yes. So going into my lineup, I will say going into this one, while I've placed in the money 3 times in a row, I don't really feel confident with this team. The reason why I don't feel very confident with it is because many of the players that I've been picking that have been having success, their salaries are going up. And so because of that, I can't afford all of them. And then I don't really feel good with the cheaper options that I've had to replace them with. So I don't know how I feel about this going forward. I've felt like the best strategy is to have both Kawhi and Steph in the lineup. I feel like I've had more success when I've had both of them in there as compared to when I've only had one of them in there. So I picked both of them again. I'm picking Kawhi as the captain. I feel like with the Raptors trying to close us out, I feel like the Raptors are still going to win the game. I feel like he's the better choice to have it captain. And as I've stated in previous podcasts, for whatever reason, he does seem to play better at Oracle than he does at home. Even when he was on the Spurs, he had the same success. And I don't see him missing 15 shots again. I don't see him putting up 26 shots on 24 attempts. I just don't see him having that bad of a game. I think he's going to be more efficient. So I picked him as my captain. Steph, I feel like you can't go wrong with. And then I had to have my boy Serge Ibaka in there again. Even though his salary went up, I still picked him. He's just been on a roll lately, and I don't see it stopping here, especially with the Warriors being banged up again with the big men, with Looney getting re-injured. I feel like he's still going to continue to have a good game. I feel like Marc Gasol will too, but he was more expensive than Ibaka, so I kept Ibaka. Now here's where I get a little more shaky with my lineup. Jerebko obviously hasn't played in the last 2 games, so obviously it looks really questionable as to why I would have him in there. And the reason why I picked him again, two reasons. One, I feel like at some point soon he's going to have to play. He's played in this series before, and even in one of the games he played, he took 6 shots and played a decent amount of the game. So I'm not sure why he hasn't played at all in the last 2 games. Although I guess in that one game he was 1 of 6, so maybe that was why. But I don't know. I feel like with the Warriors having so many injuries with their big guys, he's going to have to go in there at some point, I would think. Now, maybe he doesn't and he gets me another 0. I don't know.
Probably.
But
Hey, that's worked out so far.
yeah, I think, but yeah, I have won 3 in a row even with him in there, and not, well, 2, he was 2 of them, and Powell for the Raptors was the other one. And Powell did at least play in that game, so at least I didn't look totally dumb with that one. He just didn't put up any stats. And this is where, and also too, Danny Green. Now, I've picked him twice in these NBA finals, and he had one game where he was really good for me, and he had one game where he was really bad for me. The one I lost was one of the game I had him where he did really bad. I just don't know if I trust him, but I feel like with him having 2 bad games in a row, he's got to get it going eventually. And again, just with the other players that were around that salary mark, I just didn't see anything else that looked like a good option to me. And my last expensive player is Siakam. He's 8,800. He has at least dropped a little bit because of some of these bad performances. So I'm hoping maybe he can pick it up. I wanted to get Klay Thompson in there, but I couldn't afford him. So because his price went up to 9,200, and I only had, as you can see there on the screen, I only had 300 salary remaining. So I wasn't able to afford the difference. And I could have tried subbing Danny Green out for somebody or subbing Ibaka out for somebody, but I just felt like the people I could have that were a little bit cheaper than them that I could have replaced them with weren't going to do as well. So I'm just hoping Siakam has a bad game. I mean, not a bad game, obviously. I'm hoping he has a better. I meant to say I had hoping he. I said you had great strategy, Cotton. Yeah. Sorry, guys, that was a total botch on my part. I had hoping he doesn't have a bad game and hoping he has a better game in my mind at the same time, and I just totally crisscrossed the two there. So I do apologize for that, but obviously I'm hoping Siakam has a better game than he's been having, but I feel like if he has another lackluster game, and then if Danny Green has another lackluster game, and if Jerebko doesn't play again, this lineup's going to be bad. But I just had a hard time with the salaries figuring out a way to get something else that I was more confident with, and this is my end result. So we'll see what happens with it. So Zach, since you were the second highest finisher out of the you might, speaking of that, help find me there that just came up on the screen with Kyle Lowry. If Danny Green if did what?
I was saying, does anybody? Is he still missing? Because I don't know where he is.
Well, I was just about to say, man, if Danny Green has another terrible shooting performance, he might have to be on one of these missing milk cartons too. I mean, I don't know, man. But anyway, Zach, so I'll turn it over to you now. Go ahead, man.
All right, thank you. So for all the meme, we're gonna start making more memes too. So those are fun. But so everything that Eric said, I'm going to give you guys a kind of a bold and different take on my lineup. I'm not going to go through every player and tell you why they're so good. I'm just going to give you guys this. Double lock this lineup as a win. I'm telling you right now. I haven't stated my confidence on any of the lineups before. And I haven't done any locks on my game predictions. But this one right here, Eric wasn't sounding too confident on his lineup. My lineup, I'm locking it. Not just a single lock, a double lock. Klay Thompson.
So what you're saying is if people want to win in their DraftKings lineup, this for sure will win people money.
Don't join our group because I don't want to be tying with you guys. But yes, that is
I'm hoping
Oh.
for your sake that you don't look really stupid when we record the next podcast.
No, I wouldn't be doing a double lock if I thought I was going to look stupid. But for everybody listening on the podcast services, I am going to run through my lineouts because you can't see it right now on YouTube. I have Klay Thompson as my captain. Klay Thompson is going to have the best game of any Warrior in this game. I'm calling that right now.
Despite the fact that he's picking the Raptors to win.
Yeah, well, I said best Warrior. I said
Yes.
best Warrior. He's
Yes.
gonna have the best performance of the Warriors. And then Serge Ibaka will get more minutes, and he will continue to be effective. Obviously, he hasn't been a question mark or anything lately. He's been phenomenal. Steph Curry will have a great game. Kawhi Leonard, both those guys are guaranteed, I think, 60 plus each of them, even as utility guys.
Even
Quinn
with Klay doing better.
Yeah. Quinn Cook will surprise you. You know, he's my cheapest guy. And Danny Green will come back. You will see Danny Green again. He's not going to get the Kyle Lowry wanted poster. He's going to match either Steph or Klay. I'm going to say Klay gets, 7 threes or something like that. Yeah, right there. Danny Green gets 7 threes. He'll get 6 or 7 threes. I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. That lineup's good. It will win.
Well, okay, so very confident words from Zach there. So I guess I'll move on to mine. My lineup is quite similar to Eric's here, but unlike Eric, I decided that I would take a bit of a hit and actually put Klay Thompson in my lineup. So I went with Kawhi as captain. I know I'm picking the Warriors to win the game, but it's really hard to go against picking Kawhi as captain. He'll have a better game for sure. And, you can't go wrong with him. But I did want to go with both Steph and Klay. I think they're both going to do really well. And when they're on the court together, they complement each other so well. One of them doesn't have to take over the game like they would if the other wasn't out there. So they help each other out, and it leads to both of them getting more points. So I took both of them. Serge Ibaka, we've talked about him endlessly on this podcast, it feels like, about how well he's been playing. And I'm with Zach. I think he's finally going to end up getting more minutes. I mean, Marc Gasol did have a pretty decent game last time, but you can't argue with the way that Serge Ibaka has been playing. Danny Green, I'm also with Zach on this one. I feel like Danny Green is going to come back this game. He's had 2 cold games in a row, and he's a very hot or cold player, like Eric mentioned. So I think he's going to come back in this game. But since I took the hit and decided to put Klay Thompson in my lineup, I'm having to sacrifice my last position. I don't even know this guy's first name. I'm just going to say that.
That's great. Oh, man.
You want to make a guess? I'm going to guess, because I'll be honest, I don't know it either. I'm going to guess Damon. That's my guess. I don't have any. Okay.
Wait, what? Say yours again, Zach?
Damon.
I'm guessing Devin.
Okay, see, I was thinking similar to Zach. I'm going Damian.
Okay.
Like Damian Lillard, but
like
Damian. Let's click on it.
Damon. Yeah,
Damian Jones.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
If I don't win in DraftKings, at least I got this right.
But yeah, so I've got Damian Jones on my team, and I'm hoping I can kind of go the Eric route and have someone on my team who doesn't do very well or maybe even gets 0, but I'm hoping Klay Thompson will be enough to make up that difference. But there was a bit of strategy into why I picked Damian Jones instead of any of the other really cheap players. I was only $100 away from getting Jerebko, which I would have taken him if I had that $100.
See, my strategy is kicking in.
Yeah, but I took Damian Jones. He was actually, because Jerebko was $1,400, Damian Jones was $1,200. The rest of the players who you don't even see in the games, like Jeremy Lin and Evans and Lloyd. They were all only 1,000, but Damian Jones was 1,200, and it is because Damian Jones is a center, and we've been talking about how the Warriors have been having all these injury issues with their big men. You know, Kevon Looney, we don't know if he's going to play for sure. DeMarcus Cousins has this nagging injury, and that leaves their only other real big men besides Jerebko is Andrew Bogut. And Andrew Bogut can't play the long minutes like he used to. He's really old now, and he can't play probably more than 7 to 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping that leads to, if Kevon Looney doesn't end up playing, that Damian Jones can get on the court at least and do something. Or I can
get a rebound or something.
Right. Or I can end up going the Eric route and still doing really well, even with someone getting 0 on my team, because I sacrificed to get Clay on the team. Because when I was making this lineup, I originally decided that I was going to take out Serge Ibaka and have Andre Iguodala on here along with Quinn Cook. But I decided I just couldn't pass up on Ibaka. So I put Ibaka in, and I'm taking Damian Jones, even though I didn't even know his first name until about a minute ago. So I got to do something to get me out of the cellar.
I'll just say this. It does look very similar to my lineup. We got different captains and swap Damian Jones and Quinn Cook, but it's the same. We have 5 of the same players. So
yeah, well, I mean, and I've got 4 of the same players as Eric too. So we all have very similar lineups, but just a bit different in some of them. Zach obviously has the different captains, so we'll see how it goes. I'm just hoping
if Siakam does better than Klay Thompson, then I'm beating these guys. But if Klay Thompson destroys Siakam on the stat line, then they're going to beat me. So that's pretty much what it's coming down to.
I will be content with anything other than last place at this point.
Good strategy, Cotton.
Okay.
Let's see if it pays off for him.
Yeah. So now we're going to move on to the next section. I'll let Zach transition us into it since he's the host. So
yeah. So last time we tried out a current events by Connor section where he just talked about a couple different topics like the Stanley Cup. The French Open was one of them, some others. So he's going to do the same thing. He's prepared a couple of quick points about different sports and get you guys caught up to news on those.
Yeah, so if you guys can't see on my screen right now, you probably can, that it is currently 1:58 a.m. here on the East Coast. And so, which means that the Stanley Cup has concluded, and the St. Louis Blues are the new Stanley Cup champions. And I'm very happy for them. You know, I said this before, they've been around forever and have yet to win a Stanley Cup somehow. So it's really nice to see a first-time winner, you know, especially with, if you can tell here at Clutch Crew Sports, we're not the biggest fans of Boston teams. And so it was getting a bit annoying that Boston was winning everything. You know, the Patriots won the Super Bowl, the Red Sox won the World Series. So
I remember. Sorry to cut you off real quick. I just wanted to share a point. I saw this thing the other day. I don't remember how long ago it was, but if Boston had won this game and won the Stanley Cup, it would have been the first time a single city won 3 championships in the same year, in the same sports year, and like,
right.
I don't even remember how long ago it was. Like decades ago, dude. Like, a long time ago.
I've seen like memes and stuff where, you know, normally like you have at your workplace some sort of thing like X amount of days since like an injury, and it says like, you know, 30 or something, whatever it is. But they have that like X amount of days since a championship because it's like every other year, like it seems like one of their teams wins. So.
7 years since the last butt fumble.
Yeah.
But yeah, so really happy for the St. Louis Blues. I think the big factor in this game was the goaltending for sure. Bennington for the St. Louis Blues, 32 saves on 33 shots is amazing. The Bruins were controlling the game offensively, and a very, very out of character off night for Tuukka Rask, only saving 16 shots on 20 shot attempts and only an 800 save percentage. I was talking with, since I mentioned in a previous podcast that since I'm from North Carolina, I'm a big Carolina Hurricanes fan. And I was talking with one of my friends that if only Tuukka Rask could have played this bad in the series against the Hurricanes, because he's had times in this Stanley Cup where he has not looked the same. Because when in the series against the Hurricanes, he was rock solid. The Hurricanes could not get anything past him, and it was really frustrating. But I guess at some point, everybody has to fall off. All good things must come to an end. And Tuukka Rask really did not. Right. Tuukka Rask really did not play to the level that he was supposed to play in this Stanley Cup final. And a lot of people were talking about going into this Stanley Cup final that this could be similar to the last time the Bruins won, which was in 2011 when they had Tim Thomas in goal at the time. And he ended up winning the Conn Smythe. And he was pretty much the reason why they won the series. And they were talking that making similarities between him and Tuukka Rask, that was going to be what saved the Bruins. And didn't happen for them, which I can't say that I am disappointed. So happy for the Blues. And also to mention that Ryan O'Reilly won the Conn Smythe Trophy with the Blues. I actually saw an interesting stat. He's the first person to ever score a goal in 4 straight Stanley Cup games. So well deserved. Wow. He scored 9 points across the Stanley Cup Finals, 5 goals, 4 assists. Pretty sure that led all players in the finals. And one last note about this series was I wanted to mention quickly about how terrible the Blues were on their home ice and how surprised I am that they ended up winning this series with how bad they had been. So since the Bruins were technically the higher seed going into this series, they played 4 home games and the Blues played 3. And aside from game 4, where the Blues won 4-2, the other 2 games, game 3 and game 6, that the Blues played on their home ice were complete embarrassments for the St. Louis Blues. I mean, when in game 3, they lost 7-2, and in game 6, which would have, they had a chance to clinch the Stanley Cup there at home, they lost 5-1. So when you're playing that bad in front of your home crowd, it's honestly amazing to me that they still won this series. So, but congratulations to the St. Louis Blues. And like we mentioned in the last podcast, if the Raptors can go on to win the NBA Finals, then we could have 2 new champions this year already, with MLB and NFL still to come.
Which, if that's the case, will mean the Jaguars will win the Super Bowl next year.
Are you sure? Well, there are a lot of other teams that haven't won a Super Bowl.
Well, that could be the
Jags. Maybe the Carolina Panthers, Buffalo Bills.
Those teams have already had their chances.
That's right. The Jaguars haven't even been to one yet.
Yeah, we haven't. Anyway, I'll let you continue.
Yeah. So moving on to women's soccer, the Women's World Cup just got underway, and wow, United States women's team 13-0. Yeah, that obviously Thailand is not up to the level of some of the other teams in the Women's World Cup, but 13-0. I mean, that's a baseball score, if anything, or a very low-scoring football game, if anything.
Yeah, seriously.
That's the Jaguars score right there.
Right. And so Alex Morgan with 5 goals. And I do want to mention there were a lot of people criticizing the U.S. women's team for, pouring it on like they did. And I think it was Alex Morgan who was saying that in her mind, she defended it by saying it'd be disrespectful to Thailand to let up. If you just decide that you were going to let up, then it's kind of showing them like, haha, we're better than you. Y'all suck. We don't even need to play anymore. So in her mind, it was the most respectful thing to do was to keep playing hard and trying to do the best you can. And I think I saw an article with Hope Solo, who used to be the goalie for the U.S. women's team, and she also defended what they were doing. But then again, obviously Americans are going to defend Americans. So we'd be interested to see your guys' thoughts on this situation if you want to post them on our YouTube videos or to our Facebook page. But moving right along to NASCAR, Obviously, we talked about Formula One on the last podcast, but on that same day, since all over the weekend, was the race at Michigan. Joey Logano took the win for Team Penske. He is the reigning Monster Energy Cup Series champion. So we're almost about halfway through the season now. With the final, we're about to hit the halfway point. Sonoma is the next race, and then it'll be the second race at Daytona, which will mark the halfway point of the season. And it's shaping up to be a pretty similar season to last year. It's going to be a race between the two Penske drivers, Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, and then a couple of Kyle Busch is going to be up there again, like he was last year, and Kevin Harvick. Yeah, I mean, I'm more so not as happy about the Penske drivers, but Kevin Harvick is going to be in there too. I'm pulling for him. But in Martin Truex Jr., although on the score line, Martin Truex Jr. does not have as many points, he does have 3 wins this year, which is second behind, I think, only Kyle Busch, because I think Kyle Busch has 4. And so we'll see how that goes. And also, we like to do DraftKings every podcast for NBA, but Eric actually did a DraftKings lineup for this NASCAR race, so I will let him briefly discuss his NASCAR DraftKings lineup.
Yeah, guys, I haven't mentioned it in the podcast really, but I do, oddly enough, even though I don't really watch it that much, I do enjoy playing DraftKings NASCAR. I since I do have a familiarity with the drivers, I'm going to give a shout out to my papaw in Tennessee. He's a big NASCAR fan, and I've known about it because of him. So because of having a familiarity with the drivers and then understanding the rules of how DraftKings scores the points and everything, I do enjoy playing NASCAR fantasy from time to time. I don't do it every week or every race or anything, but I do like to do it from time to time. So with this lineup here, I joined a $10 lineup. It was their biggest contest. I forget how many thousands of people or how many thousands of entries were in it, but as you can see, I finished 1,497th, which normally you would think that's not that good, but I want to say there were probably 20,000 entries or something like that. So I finished in the top 20%, which netted me in the money, and I got 25. So I'll take it. Like I said, I have a feeling my streak could be coming to an end with this basketball one for Game 6, but of the NBA Finals. But I had success here. My strategy, I picked Joey Logano. He was on the pole, and I felt like he was going to lead a lot of laps, which is a big component to DraftKings, and that ended up working out for me, obviously, since he not only started first, but he finished first. And I forget how many laps he led exactly, but I know he led the majority of them. Kyle Busch I picked because he was starting a little more in the middle of the field, and you get points if you finish higher than where you started. So I figured he was going to finish better than 15th, and he wins a lot of times too, as Connor mentioned. So he's one even though I don't like him, he's one that I usually pick a majority of the times I play DraftKings. Kyle Larson I picked because I've heard he normally has a lot of success in Michigan, which he didn't really this time, but still got me 43 points, so I was okay with his result. That other guy underneath him, Busher, I think. I don't even know
Chris
if I'm pronouncing.
Buescher.
Okay, so it's like Connor didn't know the guy in the Warriors name. I didn't even know this guy's name, but I figured with him starting way back at 31st that he was going to end up doing better, and he actually was my biggest positive surprise of my lineup, finishing in 16th and getting me 46 points. He was actually my third highest scorer. And then underneath him, Bubba Wallace was my most disappointing driver. I figured him starting in 27th, I figured he was going to move up in the field a little bit and maybe finish top 20 or something, but he actually finished one place worse than where he started and only got me 15 points. I was disappointed. If I didn't win in the money, it would have been because of him, but thankfully, my other guy, it's bad I don't know his first name either. Corey LaJoy. Okay, I knew his. I figured his last name was LaJoy based on what I was reading there, but he was by far the cheapest option that I had, and he was starting 32nd. So he was another good surprise for me, finishing 9 places higher than where he started and got 30 points. In the future, I'll do other lineups and maybe explain them before the race on the podcast, who I went with and why. And if you are looking at this, I know NASCAR is not as popular as some of the other sports, but if you're listening to this and you want to consider making a NASCAR lineup in DraftKings and you want to ask questions about the scoring system or how any of it works, you can definitely leave a note on the Facebook page. We still haven't been able to figure out how to get me to be an admin on there, but Zach or Connor can relay it to me and I could respond to it, or if you want to comment on the YouTube video or DM on Twitter or whatever. I'm the one that runs the Twitter account, so you can message me on there. But I'd be happy to explain more on that. But I don't want to go too much more into this. I'm going to let Connor get to the next current event.
Yep. So we are on to that was pretty good. Maybe we'll talk about that more in the future. And we are going to move on to the final current event. And that is something that happened just recently. This article, if you see the timestamp here, was posted at that's not what I want. Was posted at 9:38 p.m. So really not that long ago. And it seems like in the past, we've always heard about teams accusing the New England Patriots of cheating and all these scandals and blah, blah, blah. But now it appears that the New England Patriots are actually filing a tampering charge against the Houston Texans. So a little bit of the background, there's not much information on this story right now. I just kind of wanted to bring it up since in the future we will be talking about football a lot more. And so, yeah, the Houston Texans fired their general manager basically the night after New England's Super Bowl ring ceremony that took place at Robert Kraft's house. And I don't know if there was some shady stuff going on where they're trying to recruit this one guy who works for the Patriots. His name is Nick Caserio, and he's been like a personnel manager for the Patriots for a really long time. And I guess the Patriots weren't happy with the way the Texans have gone about trying to get an interview with him to be their GM. But it will be interesting to see how this goes into the future, and maybe this might also be a topic for future current events. But that's going to wrap it up for the current event section, and I will move it back to Zach, and he will transition to the next section.
Yeah, so that was a good little filler here with a bunch of other sports topics that we normally would not get to cover in primarily NBA, NFL, and college and fantasy focus for the show. So it's always nice to hear about other sports. And now for the highly anticipated rant by Eric, I'll let him take it away.
Yeah, guys. So for those of you that listened to the last podcast, you knew that I ranted on the Warriors fans for leaving the game early. This podcast, I'm flipping the switch and I'm ranting on the Raptors fans. The reason why I'm ranting on the Raptors fans, most of you probably know, especially if you saw the game, when Kevin Durant tore his Achilles, there were fans in the crowd that were cheering this. In fact, it looked like a majority of the fans were cheering. Yeah, Connor's highlighting that one guy especially was like got up out of his seat and was like waving goodbye to him. To me, this is just a classless move. I mean, this is one of the worst things that any fan can do of any sport is when you cheer that somebody else gets injured. Now, I know the Raptors players kind of were waving to the crowd to stop doing that, and then eventually when Durant did walk off the court, it seemed like they had more of a change of heart, and then when they were clapping when he walked off the court, it was more so like, okay, we're glad you're up and moving, glad you're going to be okay kind of thing. But that cheer when he first got hurt and just the way they erupted, and I know they showed the fans outside the arena and they erupted in cheers too. That's just a trashy move, man. And for those of you listening to this, as you know too, I'm an Oklahoma City Thunder fan. I hate Kevin Durant. Like I can't. I was so pissed off at him when he jumped ship from the Thunder and went to the Warriors. But then even still, even though I can't stand this guy, I was not cheering the fact, and I'm rooting for the Raptors to win the championship too. I was not cheering when I found out he got hurt. I was at work, of course, so I didn't see this live, but some people came up to me, oh man, like Durant got hurt. And all I could think of was, man, that really sucks for him. You know, I don't like him, but my respect for him did go up just for the fact that he did try to play in this game, knowing he probably had a high chance of re-injuring himself, but he still went out there and tried to play anyway. And I don't necessarily like him now because of this, but at the same time, I have sympathy for him, not just for the injury, but because of the way the crowd reacted to this injury. I just think, I guess it just kind of shows you the tendencies of how people are, but I don't know how you can cheer for this because, yeah, it gave the Raptors a better chance to win the game, but you don't cheer when someone gets hurt. I know I'm kind of saying a lot of the same things over and over. It is late. I'm tired, but I mean, I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that, but to me, just a terrible move by the Toronto fans. I can't think of it. I'm just so mad. Like it was crazy too, because I got home, I didn't know the Raptors fans had cheered when I first heard about it because I was at work. And then I got home and was looking up the details of his injury, and that's when I saw it, and I was like, "Are you kidding me that they did this?" And like I got on Messenger with Connor and Zach. I was like, "Yeah, I know what I'm ranting about in the next podcast. I have my topic."
This was an easy rant topic, and I figured when it happened that you were going to pick this one out, so I'm not surprised.
I mean,
yeah, good thing we weren't doing a poll yet because this would have been the fans would have been able to guess it pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean. And just one short thing to add on. I mean, unfortunately, this isn't the first time something like this has happened in sports. I know a lot of Cowboys fans still mention this was back in the 90s when Michael Irvin, they were playing a game against the Eagles in Philadelphia, and Michael Irvin ended up going down with an injury, and the Eagles fans were just cheering as loud as they could. They were so happy that Michael Irvin had gotten injured and blah, 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 and it just... Unfortunately, this is not a unsurprising move for Philadelphia Eagles fans. I hate to offend any Eagles fans out there, but, Philadelphia fans are not exactly the most well-respected fans in the NFL.
Well, I mean, they booed Santa Claus one time, for Christ's sake. Like, come on, man.
Right. So, but, it's just really sad to see when stuff like this happens, because at the end of the day, it really is just a game. And these guys are putting their bodies and they're giving it their all to play this game for our enjoyment. And you hate to see when people get hurt, especially a very serious injury like what Durant has with a torn Achilles. So, yeah, I just wanted to add that. It's really sad to see, and unfortunately, it's not the first time something like this has happened.
Yeah, I won't drag this on too much longer. I agree with everything you guys said. And to me, this injury is so cringeworthy. Like, I can't even imagine the pain of an Achilles, and like that's terrible, man.
It's one of the worst pains.
Yeah, I know it's a terrible pain, and it really sucks that it happened. But maybe the basketball gods got back at Toronto for cheering the injury and
because they lost the game at the end.
So the bad karma there, but yeah, so that's we'll wrap that up now for the closing part of the show, that rant by Eric. This is a good episode. We had a lot to talk about. This is probably the longest episode to date we've had. So if you guys have listened from start to finish, it's pretty impressive. But some key takeaways, like I said, to everybody watching, I'm going to sound like a fool if this doesn't work out, but that double lock on my DraftKings lineup, I'm telling you, that's going to win. At least, especially in the
money
style that we're doing, where 50% of the people win. If this was like the previous format, it'd be a little bit more risky for me to come out with what I said, but
Yeah,
I
you're
feel
gonna get
confident
first.
in my lineup. Yeah. I'm not saying I'm going to be in first necessarily, but I am going to double lock the win. So look forward to talking about that in the next one. But also looking forward to the next game tomorrow, or I guess today now. You guys are hearing this. So so
In a way,
if
more games helps us.
yeah. And if if Toronto does win, then we're gonna talk about obviously the win and the finals, or the end of the finals and final thoughts on the season. Maybe do a little bit of like vote, like voting our ballots for MVP, Rookie of the Year awards, that sort of stuff too, and kind of close out the NBA's regular season, look at the draft. But if it doesn't, then we've got a game 7 to talk about too. So a lot of good things coming up planned for the future. Hopefully there will be a mock draft video that we come out with before the draft next week. Uh, that's going to be something. I normally don't watch the NBA draft past the Orlando Magic's lottery pick, but this year I'm going to watch it from start to finish because there's a couple guys in the second round that will probably be drafted in the second round that I've watched closely in college, so I'm excited for them.
When the
And
Magic weren't part of the lottery this year.
yeah, and the Magic are
Yeah, you gotta wait
they're-
farther.
it's
You gotta
not-
wait longer for their pick than normal.
yeah, it's gonna be a lot longer for them to pick, but so we've got some fun episodes planned in the future. Remember, make sure to like our Facebook and Twitter page for updates about episode releases, memes, polls, all sorts of different content coming out.
Yeah, there's a poll on Twitter. You still got time to vote for who you think's gonna win Game 6. So
Yeah,
if you use Twitter, let your voice be known.
I'm going to be putting the link in the videos now. We're going to put it up on Facebook too, so you guys can get there easily.
yeah. So spread the word with your friends and family if you really enjoy this show. Make sure to leave comments, questions, concerns. Like I say every time, we'll talk about we'll answer your question. Especially now, you'll probably be the only question. So we'll definitely, if you have a question, we'll definitely answer it for you. So just take care, everybody that listened to this, and have a great rest of your day.
See you guys.
Peace.